I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we will begin with roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk. Here. Councilmember Darris.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Darris, excuse me. Councilmember Peak.
Here.
Mayor Borba.
Here.
And Councilmember Newsom is absent tonight.
Okay, if you are attending in person or listening to us on one of our many other avenues for watching the city council meeting, welcome. Please, thank you for joining us. We will proceed to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are considered routine and non-controversial by staff and will be acted upon in a single action by the city council unless requested otherwise by an individual council member for separate consideration. We will invite public comment on any consent calendar items before we take action. So I will see, is there any member of the council wishing to pull an item or have question of staff on a consent calendar item? Okay. If not, we will invite the public, see if there's any member of the public wishing to speak on a consent calendar item. Seeing none, we will bring it back to the council and look for a motion.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Funk and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Darris. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes.
Councilmember Peak.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Darris.
Yes.
And Mayor Borba.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Newsom absent.
Okay, looks like we will move on to updates from the city manager.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Lewis.
Mayor and members of council. I appreciate that. And I do have a few. My first is to share about Alert Slow. And this may sound like a program that was familiar that this city initiated about emergency notifications. So in partnership with San Luis Obispo County, Atascadero Fire and Emergency Services is excited to launch Alert Slow. Alert Slow is the new mass notification system that will provide you with important information, including weather emergencies, planned power outages, highway closures, and important community updates. Please visit alertslow.org to learn more. Register today, get signed up. This is really important. This will be the official notification of fires, evacuations, other emergency incidents. You do put in your address, you put in your phone number, you can put in whether you want to be paged, called, emailed. You can add additional people's numbers. So really a very important thing. And as I'd shared 2 weeks ago, the city will be focused on mitigating the disaster, whatever it is, and restoring normalcy to the community, keeping roadways open, keeping traffic flowing, keeping lanes open for emergency vehicles. People also need to help themselves. And so being early notified allows you the most time for evacuation and whatever else you need to do to stay safe. So please do sign up at alertslow.org. Next, I want to share about our new Cerrado Aviaries exhibit. So this is pretty cool. This was money from the Wine Festival and others, and the Friends Group actually opened a new exhibit with a ribbon cutting on January 18th. This features the hyacinth macaw and the Toco toucans. I'm not sure if we have pictures of those here. Thank you to the Lakeside Wine Festival Committee and the Friends of the Charles Paddock Zoo for their donations to make this come to life. The toucans are fabulous and the macaws aren't so bad themselves. So just amazing birds to watch, and their eyes are just crystal blue. Special thank you to the master gardeners that planted the variety of plants that adorn the exhibit, and to our zoo team for all their extra hard work to get this new exhibit open. I was at Santa Barbara Zoo meeting with some of the zoo directors last week as we prepare for accreditation, and was paying at a keen eye to the condition of the Santa Barbara Zoo. And obviously it looked great. The exhibits look great, but I was really proud that our exhibits are right in there. And my hats off to our staff and the master gardeners for their work as far as the fauna, the flora that was in the exhibits, very similar. So great new exhibit. Next on ECR project construction update. So things are looking a little different out there. Work continues in the median on El Camino between Colony Cinemas and Huckleberries, and the Virginia Plaza site. So that's newer. We've moved much of the work north of Traffic Way now, which is progress. We're moving south to north, and you can see on the south end near the theater, we've lifted up the K-rails, and you can see the actual hardscape end, which is kind of neat. Lets you start seeing the future. We're milling pavement installing landscaping and pavers and doing concrete work on curbs and planters, and electrical lighting work, some of that you saw this evening, needing to rerun the conduit that was corroded. And so there will still be narrow travel lanes and traffic delays for next several weeks. We will have some night work, and we do this only when absolutely necessary, but it does shave off days and hassle. And the intersection of El Camino Real and Traffic Way from Tuesday, January 28th through Wednesday, January 29th. So this has to do with underground electrical for the lighting. There will be some traffic delays during that time, but doing so definitely saves us during rush hour the following day. We'll have concrete curb and planter work now through January 30th on the northeast corner of El Camino Real and Rosario. Businesses and driveways are always open. Please be mindful of bicyclists and pedestrians. Again, atascadero.org/ECR project is a site you can go to get the latest updates, 2-week look aheads on where we're going to be and what we're doing. And we continue to do outreach for businesses. We have a Shop Downtown Atascadero website. We're doing little snippet commercials for businesses to try and that they can use to promote themselves that are in the construction corridor. So trying to do a lot to keep awareness on that corridor. Next, I want to share the final design concept here. You can see plans since 2017. Why are we going through all this? I just wanted to remind the community, this is the design. And so it was a vision back in 17, so 8 years ago, really to enhance safety, and that's through lighting, slower traffic speeds, enhance economic development and sense of place. So this is actually enhancing planters and appearance and decorative lighting and beautiful medians, and then adding a lot of parking, right? Well over 100 spaces of free parking. And so it's going to be incredibly beautiful. It's going to really feel like a downtown. It'll be much safer at Sip and Chops and other things that we're doing crossing between both sides of our town. We already have a couple new development projects in the works north of Traffic Way on the west side. So we continue to see that side grow in density and grow in some really cool restaurants and shops. And so this connection between the two parts of downtown will make it much safer and much more attractive. So we're well on our way. We're well over halfway through the project. And so we're getting there. Finally, I have a neat quality of life slide. The annual father-daughter dance there are few tickets left. So if you're hearing me, please be one of the first people at the community center tomorrow morning, or you may not get a ticket. So we have our last night Saturday. Friday's sold out, and we're down to about 20 tickets this afternoon from 7 to 10. For the Mother's Son Dance, that's sold out quick. So that is sold out Friday, February 7th. So pretty neat that we have these amazing opportunities for our parents and their children. You want to get to the community center first thing tomorrow. Tickets will likely be gone by the afternoon. So terrific. I appreciate our community services and promotions department for putting these things on. And that's it. If there's any questions, council, I'm happy to answer.
Does any member of the council have a question for the city manager? I had one. You mentioned landscaping will be coming soon for those areas where the planters have been put in on the downtown project. When do you think that will be?
Well, we will still have concrete work likely through March. So I think you're going to see landscaping in April. We are really going to focus on the pavers. Landscape electricals, April, May. That's some of the last things we're doing and putting in the soil, but we're getting there. The hardscape work's really coming along.
Right. It's just, I mean, now that some of those planters are and you can see them, it makes you go, oh,
yeah,
what's this going to look like with plants in it? So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, with that, we're done with the city manager's comments. We will move to community forum. Community forum is reserved for persons wanting to address the council on any matter not on the agenda, but over which the council has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record before making any comments. And I will add that the Brown Act precludes us from entering into any significant discussion on something not on the agenda. So if a member of the public raises a matter of interest, we may at our discretion ask staff to answer a question or potentially ask staff to come back on an issue later, but we cannot get deeply into a discussion on a non-agendized item this evening. Now, any member of the public wishing to speak in community forum, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we will close community forum and move on to our next item, which is our public hearings, item B1 on the Del Rio Commercial Area Specific Plan, also known as the Del Rio Ranch Project. And we will be First, I will ask, are there any members of the council who had any ex parte discussions that need to be disclosed? Yes.
I did have a discussion with Jenny Kim, representing the applicant this morning,
Okay.
or earlier today, regarding an issue that I will bring up in public discussion.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else? And I have not had any since a long time ago when we previously just considered this issue. Okay, with that, we will turn this over to Mr. Phil Dunsmore, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. This is not the first time we've looked at this property. We've looked at this property a few times for different proposals, but now we've got one that fits. This is a part of the greater Del Rio area commercial specific plan. And that's a plan that was approved some years ago that includes the Valley Fresh Store that's now being built, the Hilton Home to Suites Hotel that's been built for some years. It's the area that's outlined in red on the screen. And tonight, our planning manager, Kelly Gleason, is going to share with you some details of a very interesting project here that's related to tourism. And it's a project that will essentially be lodging units and an RV park and some accessory uses that go along with that. So without any further ado, before I get into any more of those details, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, and she's going to give you some details on the project, but I'll be here to help answer questions and guide us along. And the applicant team is here as well. And I think our Public Works Director may want to chime in later as well. And got a couple members of our planning team here as well tonight. So a lot of support. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Good evening, Council. So as Phil mentioned, this is the southeast project site of the Del Rio Road Commercial Area Specific Plan. Total, it's about 11 separate parcels today. It totals about 26 acres in size. And a little bit of background, as Phil mentioned, the Del Rio Road Specific Plan has been around for quite some time. It was originally adopted in 2012 with the Walmart project on this particular site. We came back for some amendments in 2020 when Walmart withdrew their application and opened up some development potential and some use potential on the site and redid some traffic analyses to help some projects move forward a little more quickly. In 2021, we came with sort of the first version of Del Rio Ranch, which was also a tourist-oriented development, but it also had a lot of features in terms of commercial, mixed-use development, a large entertainment center with parking garage, an amphitheater, and a conference center. So since that time, our applicant team has revised their proposal, gotten some interest from investors, and they're moving forward with what we will see tonight. Planning Commission did see the current proposal and recommended approval. They did modify a condition to clarify that they didn't really want some palm trees along our Del Rio Road and El Camino frontages, but that they were okay with that within the development as it fits within their theme and their vision. So I just did want to point that out to you as we move forward. In terms of the project description, as Phil mentioned, there's a master plan of development being considered tonight for what's basically a large RV and glamping resort. There's a commercial center as well at the corner of El Camino and Del Rio to be sort of the public facing side of the project, but a majority of the site is being proposed as a high-end RV and glamping resort. Part of the application includes a general plan amendment. There was a portion of the site that was high-density residential, and they're proposing to change the entire site to commercial to allow for the more tourist-oriented focus. We're also removing that site from the housing element inventory, and we've done a calculation, and we can meet the findings with our existing sites as proposed when we remove this site. There's also corresponding zone change to take away that multifamily portion, and then specific plan amendments that would allow the master plan of development to be consistent with that overall planning document for the area. Digging a little deeper into the master plan of development, there's about 22,000 square feet of commercial that's planned for the intersection of Del Rio and El Camino Real. These are 3-story commercial buildings with a more public-facing first floor that would be accessible to anybody in Atascadero, not necessarily part of the resort development. And then 2 additional stories on top of that where there would be hotel units. These would be hotel units with kitchens, and so they would allow for some extended stay. options in there. There's also a height modification to get to that 3 stories and some of the grade changes that they're proposing with enough architectural detailing to make really attractive roof lines and fit with the architectural theme. They are asking to go slightly above and beyond the specific plan height limitation with their roof features, not necessarily with occupied floor space. In terms of the RV resort, there are 98 RV spaces. Those are mostly along the edge of Rio Rita Road and Del Rio Road towards the eastern portion of the site. 70 glamping units that they're hoping to tuck within the topography of the site to keep a lot of the existing vegetation and natural topographic features. There's a repair area along El Camino Real towards the southern end of the site that would service RVs that are there in a very minor fashion and also allow for them to service any of the golf carts that are part of the RV resort development. And then a number of site amenities that would increase the RV resort area, including a couple of pools and a clubhouse area. The large detention basin towards El Camino Real at the bottom of the site, they're hoping will also double as an event area. This would be a very sort of small stage, would allow for some food trucks to pull up and some small scale community events or concerts there. So not quite the amphitheater that was there before, but would be kind of an event lawn space. And then consistent with the Del Rio Road commercial area specific plan, there is a public road proposed. So that is a road that comes off of El Camino Real and will service properties to the south that we are rezoning to multifamily residential as part of the general plan update. Just highlighting a couple features about the development proposal. This would be the view from the intersection of El Camino Real and Del Rio Road. You can see that they've located those commercial buildings to be very forward and public facing and generate a lot of interest at the intersection with sort of a more sort of Mediterranean design theme. Did want to note that this is slightly raised from the intersection of El Camino Real and Del Rio Road, similar to Walmart, but not quite as high. They're able to work with the topography a little bit more with this current proposal. And you can see on that section cut on the screen, the proposed retaining wall and then the 3-story building. In terms of the RV resort, the yellow area highlighted is the location of the proposed RVs. And you can see the colored rendering is more of the amenity area with the proposed pool locations and clubhouse area. A lot of outdoor spaces proposed in terms of the high quality RV resort that they are going for. I did want to note there was a lot of discussion at DRC and Planning Commission about screening of the RVs from Del Rio Road. The original specific plan previously wanted the RVs located interior to the site to reduce their visibility. However, to reduce grading on the site, they are proposing them around the edge, but they do have a wall that is very commercial in nature, very landscaped, very set back. That wall is about 28 feet tall and should screen most of the RVs along the Del Rio Road frontage. And you can see a rendering with the landscaping and detailing that they're proposing. There are a couple key conditions that we wanted to highlight tonight that are part of the master plan of development proposal. The first one is condition 27, which does acknowledge that all of the hotel uses on the site, whether they be the extended stay hotel model with kitchens on the second and third floor, or glamping sites, or the transient RV sites, are subject to TOT. So these are transient uses that are subject to transient occupancy tax and cannot be accommodate stays of greater than 29 days. There will be a deed restriction that's going to be required to be recorded on the property that addresses such. Also, condition number 39, the auto repair sort of service area that's part of the proposed development is intended for RVs and use of the RV resort on the site. So this is very small scale. They're not supposed to have large repair type facilities there. It's kind of car wash, very cosmetic, maybe some interior detailing. They will service some of their golf carts, but this is not intended to be a separate use from the rest of the RV site. It's intended to service the RV resort. Just a couple details about some of the actions that you'll be taking in addition to the master plan of development. There is the land use and zone change, which eliminates the residential portion of the site, which is currently that wavy brown area along Rio Rita Road. Again, modification to the housing element to take the site out of our housing sites inventory. And we do have an analysis in the staff report that shows that we're still meeting housing sites available to meet our RENA numbers for this cycle. And then some specific plan amendments. So amendments to the document that update some of the maps that are consistent with the master plan of development. Again, changing some of the RV park requirements that required it interior to the site and set a limit on the amount of land that could be dedicated to the RV use. And then an amendment that was not necessarily highlighted, but is an amendment to the specific plan that should be brought up is an amendment to the southern boundary setback. So the specific plan currently requires a 30-foot setback where adjacent to residential uses. The southern property line has some sparsely located glamping units, as well as some of the repair facility just kind of creeps into that 30 feet a little bit. So there is an amendment to change that to 20 feet. We do believe that the siting of the glamping units is fairly compatible with adjacent residential uses, and the repair area is very close to El Camino Real and adjacent to an access easement on the other residential property. So an adequate setback will be maintained. So just in summary, we're looking at a general plan and zoning map amendment this evening, a housing element amendment, a specific plan amendment, and adoption of the master plan of development. So this is the final action on this project. If they move forward with this proposed design, they can move forward to building permits. So staff is recommending that you take the 3 actions that are listed in your staff report this evening to approve the project. And we are available for any questions. And the applicant has a large team in the audience that I'm sure can answer any specific technical questions as well.
Right, thank you, Ms. Gleason. We will allow the applicant a period of time to discuss the project and then also ask you to stay at the podium to answer questions from council. But at this point, does any member of council have questions for staff? I'll start on my left. Councilmember Peak.
Yeah, concerning the public road, the initial question that arose for me was the adoption of the maintenance of the public road that is not yet named. Excuse me, off ECR going and then hooking into the future southern development, multifamily development. The adoption of that road into the maintenance, how much of that road is going to be in this development? And how much of that road is going to be in the future multifamily development? What percentage of the road is going to be in the?
I don't have an exact percentage. We kind of have a little exhibit that shows what the intended alignment of that road is. So off to the left is the road that is through this proposed development. And then you can see this is actually the proposed general plan per the general plan update. So you can see the orange would be the newly zoned multifamily residential properties. And then this road would be intended to serve those properties, potentially connect to San Benito. We don't have a plan line established yet, but that's the thought behind it, to serve those multifamily properties. And then we do have a portion of the road, so that leg already constructed as part of the Emerald Ridge development that connects to El Camino Real currently.
So will this future road have an assessment for the future residents to pay for maintenance, or is it getting adopted into the general maintenance?
The way that the specific plan is currently written and the condition is written is that it would be adopted by the city for city maintenance.
Including the portion on the commercial development?
Correct. They would still be responsible for their frontage, so sidewalk and any landscaping, as well as any medians and the traffic circle. But the pavement would be a responsibility of the city.
To clarify that, though, he was wondering about whether all of it would fall under city maintenance or just the portion in this development. And my understanding was that only this portion in this development would become city maintained, and the rest would probably be maintained by whatever future development occurs. So can you clarify?
I don't believe that's accurate. This is
Okay.
part of a segment of a road that is a long planned road that would serve significant multifamily. We've already built a portion of this road that serves now the Emerald Ridge apartment project. And so this would connect to that in the future, and it would all become city maintained road as part of a future infrastructure that serves a large amount of properties, which is different than a single project road or a project driveway. It has a very different purpose to it. So it's going to be maintained in that fashion. I think Nick DeBar could probably,
Okay, well,
our Public Works Director could throw
okay.
in some more.
Because the
about
reason I
that.
asked, I was a little surprised to see that it would be city maintained. But I understood that to be, something that came about from the original Del Rio area specific plan of several years ago. And therefore we would, leave that. But if you look at other developments like Apple Colony, certainly the Lakes, which is a gated community, but Apple Colony perhaps is a better example. Those are not city maintained roads.
Correct. And it's a little different because what you're doing is you're creating an entire project, a whole new subdivision. And that road system is contained within that project. The same thing is going to happen when Barrel Creek gets developed. It's going to have a road system that serves only that project. It's completely contained in that project and doesn't serve as a connector to other neighborhoods, through other neighborhoods, and nor does it have a specific plan that would guide that. Apple Valley did have a specific plan, but still it was chosen at that time that that would be all maintained by the homeowners there because it's sort of a closed circuit. It doesn't
Okay.
link these other neighborhoods. So this is very unique in that it links many other property owners together and really it basically memorializes our future general plan so that we can do this multifamily housing to meet our arena in the future.
Okay, but I guess the gist would be that because there's potentially numerous different projects that would occur in this area, not a singular project with, like you called it, an internal circuit.
Correct.
That was what would justify it being a city maintained.
That's a part of the whole story, in addition to the specific plan and its origin directed it to go that way.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, Mayor, you're done, right? Another question? Go ahead.
I just have another road question. So Obispo is a quiet little neighborhood road coming right out of the neighborhood there. Just want to clarify that, is that an entrance and exit going right into Obispo, or is that a one-way road? Are they going to see high traffic? Are people checking in on that road?
Nobody should be checking in on that road. That it's planned to be an exit-only road. The way that the RVs come and then back in, they can only kind of go that direction out, and they really couldn't come in the other way and pull into spaces. So the check-in for RVs is meant to be off of El Camino in that sort of service RV check-in area. And that would be an exit-only driveway for just those RVs up at those spaces.
So that won't be people at the commercial businesses going up through to exit up there. There wouldn't be any reason for anybody else to be exiting up there.
There would not be, and the applicant has sort of reserved a right to put some gates on some of those more just dedicated roads to RV spaces so that they could limit any through traffic if it became an issue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you, Mayor. I really like the way the plan has progressed along. I think that this latest rendition is really nice. Just a couple of questions we've talked about in the past. This wants some clarification for anybody watching. The pool, is that going to be open to the general public for recreation?
That is a great question for the applicant team. We've of course heard their intent, but I think it's probably best if they answer that question on the record.
Okay, and then the next question might also be for, excuse me, for the applicant, but on the repair center, it seemed a little vague on even the extent of them. Are we talking about oil changes even? I mean, calling it a repair area for RVs seems like what people might envision is what it's not actually going to be.
I think a good question for the applicant team, and then based on that answer, if there are specific conditions we want to modify to ensure that it's very minimal service, we can do that.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Funk.
Yes, I wanted to follow up again on the public road access. It appears, if you look at the site plan, there's an indication that there would be a gate there, but at the southern edge of the property on that private road, it's not as, the blue line covers it in this particular thing, but right where that arrow is, in the physical documents that we reviewed, it looks like there might be a gate or something there. Can you confirm that that will not be gated and that traffic will be allowed to come through from the residential neighborhoods to develop to the south.
Yes, they have a specific condition not to gate any portion of the public road. What might be shown on the plans, and the applicant team might be able to answer this, is in the interim condition. For safety, they might need to put some sort of barricade at the end of the paved portion of the road until it's continued, but they are not allowed to gate that when it's extended in the future condition.
Okay, great. And I know there are quite a few streets in the city that are used by multiple properties, or that are not city maintained roads, but they're used by multiple properties and by residents who don't live on that street as well, but they're still non-city maintained. Am I correct in understanding that we're kind of stuck with this because this agreement was specified in the plan a decade ago, and we need to honor that entitlement that goes to the property?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll avoid further fuss about that. At what point will the city take over maintenance of the portions of that road that are within this Del Rio Ranch commercial development?
Once the road is extended to serve other developments besides this property.
Okay, so until then, it's the Del Rio Ranch
Correct.
responsibility. Okay, that takes care of that one. The other thing this is something that came up in Design Review Committee, and I spoke with the applicant about it today and promised I would bring that forward. And that's the safety issues around the exit at Del Rio Road, the easternmost of those two exits. The concern there is that you have an unusual traffic situation where slow-moving, big RVs sometimes that might tow another vehicle, or a trailer with ATVs or electric bikes, or maybe are towing a boat. So it could be very long, and that's going to move very slowly as it turns left from this property onto Del Rio Road. At the same time, the oncoming traffic on Del Rio Road of residents could easily be busy local residents who aren't expecting anything that big or slow to be suddenly in front of them. And the sight lines aren't wonderful. It's a curvy little street. You're dodging trees and deer and everything else there. And we have to assume that we may have RV drivers who are a little nervous about making that turn and moving slow, and that we have neighborhood folks who are taking the situation for granted and driving too fast. In that kind of safety situation, let me ask Director DeBar this question. Are there professional standards that can be applied to a sightline study and of such an intersection that take the weight and speed and length of these vehicles into account?
That's a great question. And the answer is there are standards. There's a number of standards. The city has a standard in its engineering standards for sightline distance. And it takes into account the speed of the road or the vehicle traveling. And then also the alignment of the road. So not only the horizontal geometrics, but also the profile of the road. So if it's in a crest situation or across, or on the other side of a hill. And so we look at all those things. There's also AASHTO standards for sightline or sight distance requirements as well. So in final design, they would be required to submit to us an analysis of what that sight distance is, and then any modifications to modify anything. So if there's a tree in the way, and they own a lot of the property that's probably in that zone that would be needed to be worked on to have clear sight distance. And so we would wait to see that from a traffic engineer, licensed traffic engineer, and then approved by me as a city engineer, make sure that that meets all those standards.
Okay.
If that I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, this is something I had hoped we came up in DRC and we were specific that that safety issue needed to be evaluated professionally. And since we don't have that study yet, there is a condition 41 in the conditions of approval that requires a sightline study for the exits, and that one in particular. But we don't have it, so we can't evaluate the assumptions and what. Are there, if that study shows that there may be issues, are there safety measures that could be used, such as enhanced advanced warning signs and flashers, the kind of things that you would have for a fire station, so that when the fire truck pulls out, the lights go off and people stop and don't run into the fire truck? Is that, can you explain what option like that might entail?
Sure. I mean, really common things, and with traffic engineering, you always try to start with kind of the less is more type of attitude and then build upon that. In different situations, like the higher the speeds, then the more, danger, or not dangerous, but the more injuries or serious injuries that can occur. So we would have some advanced warning, perhaps, like, hey, there's a blind driveway ahead in 500 feet or something like that. Sometimes a light at that intersection, just so people can see it at night. Also, you could have, like, as you mentioned, a flashing sign. I know a lot of the fire stations, have those, when they leave, the light starts flashing to advance warning. I would call those like in safety enhancements for traffic signs. So, I mean, there are those abilities. Being a residential neighborhood too, we want to be sensitive to some of the neighbors, that might have that in their front yard also. But we would look at all those things, but if they can demonstrate that, like, I've gone out there and looked at it, in my opinion, they're going to need to do at a minimum some grading on their property to knock down some of the material that's blocking cars that would be coming from the east. And then also do some vegetation, tree trimming, maybe remove some vegetation. That's at a minimum. And also probably some signage just to warn. But if they needed to do some enhanced signage, we could certainly make that a requirement through the planning review process.
Okay. And do you have any language you might suggest to strengthen condition 41 so that, such as advanced, enhanced warning signs, including flashers, would be required unless the study demonstrates they are not needed?
Sure. We certainly can modify it. It's a pretty basic condition that we wrote, and we could certainly enhance that, and I could
I
provide
think we would be prepared to share something if we're in questions and answers. If the
Sure.
council was interested in that, council member,
Sure.
we certainly could come up with something to show you, but I think we want to
Okay.
hear about that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And I have, something I can ask about too later on in terms of what we could offer to make sure that that's strong enough to assure safety of the motorists that are coming along on Del Rio and aren't expecting the vehicles of this thing, so that we keep everybody safe and folks can enjoy this beautiful, beautiful resort.
And we do have some preliminary analysis that maybe the applicant can share with you if they come up here.
Okay, thank you. And then one last traffic circulation safety question, and that's, if I read the plan correctly, and I'm looking right now at the site plan on A1, the big overview, which we see on our screen over in the upper left, but if you look at the sort of yellow areas of the RV spaces, the road that goes out to this exit that aligns with Obispo Road, that exit does not connect with any other road on the property. And I'm asking if staff, whether the applicant would be amenable to making a connection within the property to the road that goes next to the RV spaces that are adjacent to Del Rio Road, so that in the event of an emergency, there would be a way for the RVs at the upper part of the property to exit in some fashion other than Del Rio Road, just sort of continue on the loop and, come out at the signalized intersection on the new public road.
I think, I don't know if these big documents we're looking at, if you can call them up on, page A3 that shows the circulation plan so that people can understand the council member's question better. So I'm looking at A3 and I think I see, exactly what she's talking about, where a
A3 is
blue
about-
arrow ends. And I think you're suggesting that for emergency egress only, at least that it would continue to go through.
Right, yeah, that's the question, is whether folks would be amenable to that if staff happens to know. If not, I will ask the applicant that question. If they've looked at it, we can. And I'd be
I'm
happy-
not sure if my arrow shows up on your screen. Perhaps
Yes,
it
it
does. I
does.
think we're talking about this location here.
Correct.
Yes,
Mhm. It would be a good question for the applicant team. It's my understanding there's a little bit of topography there, and then with the amount that they need for turning, I'm not sure how that would be designed, but I do know that their civil engineer is in the audience and can probably speak to that.
okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Terres. I think you indicated that Councilmember Funk asked your question. So
Yes.
a Follow-on question.
Because we
Okay.
talked about that before. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And I have a question on that exit. Right now, that exit that goes out even with Obispo Road, would that be left turn only coming out of the thing?
We could prohibit right turns, but I don't think it's proposed to be
Okay.
left turn only.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went over there today and I saw, I think this area on the top left of this, if some of that was graded and cleared of higher vegetation, it would take away some of that sight distance problem. My question would be, could they cut a deal with the neighboring property owner to cut down some trees to further, maybe improve the sight line distance? And my question on the condition itself that Councilmember Funk was talking about would be, that's a pretty standard condition. And if we need to strengthen it, that's fine. I think, maybe somewhere along the line, you guys would offer the language to do that. But this language as written would allow you to require some further action if the study indicates that further actions are needed.
Yes, I believe it's strong enough to be able to do that. So when they do, this would be an encroachment permit as well. They need to do frontage improvements. So they do need to have engineering plans that address that, and then they're approved by the city.
Got it. Okay, got it. And then back to the condition regarding TOT and no stays of greater than 30 days. I read that again, and my question is, given previous situations we've had, I don't see mention that, violating that. You talk about a deed restriction, but I don't see mention that violating that and allowing people to stay more than 30 days would be explicitly a violation of this conditional use permit and would be subject to a violation fine for doing so. So in other words, if they, I don't know, let's say occupancy wasn't what they expected and they started wanting to let somebody stay over 30 days, that would be a direct violation of this conditional use or the conditions of use here.
Yeah, we do currently consider stays 30 days or greater multifamily residential. And so the implication of approving a hotel in a commercial zone that does not allow multifamily residential is that then that use would be in violation. We can certainly add additional language to the condition if it was the desire of the council to do so, that had some that explain that implication a little bit clearly.
Right, because sometimes I'm concerned that our implications are just that, they're implications and they're not necessarily clear, and people go down the road, do something. And I would just, want it to be clear that thou shalt not have the stays over 30 days. And if you do, that is a violation of your, conditional use or conditions of approval, and that there would be an explicit fine for doing so. Okay, because you might be aware we have similar situations somewhere else. Okay, all right. With that, if no further questions from council, we're going to open up to public, but I'd like to start by giving the applicant an opportunity to come up, and we'll give the applicant more than the 3-minute usual limit to address this. But I mean, the planning commission has reviewed this, the design review committee has reviewed this. We've looked at this concept and approved it in the past. So please don't start from the beginning and go over the basic concept. But please go ahead and approach the podium, whoever is representing the applicant team this evening.
There it is. Good evening, council members. Thank you again, and thanks to the city staff for a good presentation and kind of walking us through the process. My name is Eddie Herrera. I'm with EHD. I'm the architect on the project, and I'm here with all of the team. Civils here, landscape teams here. We got the applicant and the builder all here in one room to answer all of your questions. We have reviewed the conditions and are agreeable to the conditions, and we are also agreeable to the recommendations that the staff has given to you as far as the adoptions that are in place on items 1, 2, and 3. And I did want to go ahead and respond to some of the comments, mainly the sightline constraints or the issues that were raised on Del Rio. We do have our engineer here. Believe that she did send out a packet that did do some preliminary studies on that left turn and right turn and on various types of vehicles and their movements and sizes. And so preliminarily, those do conform to the turning radiuses and clearances that we need. I'll go ahead and set some time for her to come up here and maybe talk a little bit about that, should you have some specific questions. But rest assured that we are looking at those areas, and as the Public Works Department has also said, we will be conforming to a lot of the standards as we kind of get through the encroachment permit process, through the grading application process. With that said, I'm here to answer any questions. I did want to also, identify one other item that was raised as far as left turn. So the emergency exit that we have planned out for Del Rio for the RVs that are up on the hill are for a small percentage of night stays. So that road is a one-way road that's meant to serve large vehicles. And so we're not necessarily introducing a lot of the vehicles that are downstream, meaning like by the commercial area. So those vehicles don't get to kind of commute over there and use that as an exit. We do already have 2 exits stationed for Del Rio at the lower part of Del Rio, and then one at the southern end of El Camino Real. And so those will function with the roundabout that we've designed, and they'll be able to distribute the exit equally amongst the site. We have studied potential second exit, and we are agreeable to accommodating a second turnaround at that upper part for the RVs in the event that they needed provide another emergency exit. And how we would accommodate that, we would basically have a turnaround up at the hill and then have them turn back the way they came so that they exit out on El Camino Real. We think that's the safest way to go out because it does not introduce new vehicles on areas that have other campers potentially enjoying the state. So intermixing another vehicle with another campground, we want to limit that. So we would just be able to have them loop around and then come back the way they came. And that would be the safest way to address that concern. And so we're prepared to do that.
Okay, is anybody else from the applicant team going to speak or?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Rachel Hawthorne with Wallace Group. We provided a preliminary exhibit showing the site distance at the intersection of Del Rio and the one-way driveway. I'm wondering if planning staff might be able to put that up on the screen. While she's looking
Yeah,
for
go
that.
We can work on that.
We are obligated to meet city standards, city engineering standards, and also AASHTO standards for that intersection. And based on our preliminary analysis with some grading of the bank in the area where there is no development planned, We believe we can accomplish that grading, and also with vegetation removal, we can accomplish the sight lines that we need for that area. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I meant to ask staff this, but I'll ask you, because I think I misheard staff when they talked about with the wall, screening wall on Del Rio, alongside where RVs would be parked. I thought you said 28 feet tall, and that couldn't be right, I don't think. So wondering, how tall is that wall on Del Rio that would screen the RVs?
So the final grading plan hasn't been done, so it could vary, but it is approximately 14 feet tall as proposed now, but it is also in stages. There's a lot of landscape setback. There's the fountains there. If you recall, way back in time, the original Walmart plan, it was also had to be elevated so we can get a flat pad up there. So there is a height difference.
Right, okay, because I, as driving along Del Rio today, it didn't feel like a significant height distance right there along Del Rio, but I
It's
see
not-
as you go in, it would be.
Yeah, it's
elevated.
not today. So the idea is you bring some of that slope down to create a larger flat area, and then you end up with,
So if it was
a higher
14
site.
feet, it wouldn't be one singular 14-foot wall. It would be wall with some landscaping in front, go up and in a little bit, wall.
exactly. There's
Okay.
some staging there. There's some setback there. There's various heights of things going on. There's some signage. So it's not going to be like you've got a solid, hopefully, the
Right.
intent is it's not hopefully a solid block wall out of the street that's 14 to 16 foot
Right,
tall.
which is
And
more
so-
what the original Walmart design was to have this huge
Yeah, it really
wall
was that.
along.
But this
Okay.
is more like, hey, you've got gradual
Okay.
steps, you've got landscape, you've got things happening there that break up that mass. And there's
Okay.
different heights of that wall as you go to different
Got it.
locations.
That's important because to me, I mean, landscaping can cover a multitude of sins in the sense of, landscaping can take something ugly and make it look beautiful. Or not having landscaping can really make something stand out as a sore thumb. Okay, and this question might be for staff, but I want to make sure that the applicant would understand where I'm going with this. Sometimes we approve things, engineers do their best, there's standards, there's all kinds of traffic analysis and things, and you do it, and after it's built and you have a real life experience, it's, oh my God, that's not working. And what I'm wondering is, would it be possible or advisable that you say, okay, let's just do this, what you're talking about, and meets the standard. But if a couple years down the road, we've had, 6 collisions of RVs coming out of there or something, that we go back and go, okay, something's got to change here. And that the applicant has, understand there's some inherent risk, some experience risk, if you will, of what might take place, let's say within 5 years or so. So
I think I go back to, we're agreeable to having that second turnaround installed into the design. I think that will satisfy the concerns that if there was problems, even beyond the studies that we presented to the city and those were approved, that there would be a second outlet that takes you back out the way you came on El Camino.
So worst case scenario, if it was causing a problem, you could just tell people, no, you've got to go back out this way.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that would kind of be a self-corrective if necessary.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I believe we have the images for the site distance analysis, if you did want to review those.
If you wanted to show them, I don't know, does any member of the council?
I'd like to see them.
Want to see them? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, the top is a plan view using the city standard, which is based on ASHTO, and that purple or magenta line is showing you if you were in a vehicle about to proceed out into the intersection there. It's the distance required based on the speed of the road to be able for a car to stop, to see the vehicle coming out of the driveway and be able to stop if needed. So we are meeting those requirements. If you go down to the bottom of the page, it's a profile view. So again, that magenta line is your sight distance. It's at the height of a person in a vehicle, which is loosely based on a passenger car. because it's about 3 feet. So in an RV or possibly a pickup truck where you're pulling an RV, you'd be higher elevation, so you'd probably have a little bit better view. But this is the minimum standard that we're showing. And that dashed line that you see going up into a crest is the existing grade as it is now. And then that darker bold black line is the proposed elevation at which we would be grading or removing part of the slope to provide that sight distance. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Funk?
Yeah, well, we're working on the site distance, but at what point, I mean, you assume you have this is based on the safety of the driver in the RV making a good decision. But given the speed at which a large RV might make, or lack thereof, that the large RV might make that turn, would it be possible for a vehicle coming up Del Rio at speed to come upon the RV without the RV driver having been able to see that vehicle? Because it's too far away for the once by the time, so that you're taking it, so that the RV driver can't maybe see every vehicle that might arrive at that intersection by the time the rear end of whatever they're towing has made it up to speed on the street. Does that make sense?
I can maybe answer that.
Okay.
So the site distance requirements really are what do you need for distance for the vehicle that's traveling on the main line or the roadway needs to react by seeing, the RV pulling out, and then stopping a safe, to stop before they make a collision with that RV. So if they see, that's why it's so important to have a clear line of sight for this so they could stop in time. So it takes into account things like, reaction time, before you even hit the brake pedal, and, how fast you're going to come to a stop, a safe stop without, laying on your brakes essentially. And friction of the road and all those things. So AASHTO standards, they get into all these details, and that's what really allows, the city to have that tort liability, because if you meet these standards, then, the general population will be generally safe, being able to stop before, doesn't matter how fast the RV is pulling out or how long it takes. It's just a matter of what kind of distance do you need and what kind of visual sight do you need to as a motorist to stop in time,
Right.
in a safe manner.
So along those lines, it's not, the RV, they see as far as they can see, they start to make what they think is a safe turn. The issue is the person coming down the road at 45 miles an hour, not the unposted 35 mile an hour.
Correct.
So I guess the question would be, when you're looking at this and studying it and applying the standards, is 35 miles an hour realistic? It probably is for 80% of the drivers, or some, large majority, but we do have people certainly come around that, down Del Rio much faster than 35. Is that taken into consideration when you do these kind of analysis?
Yeah, usually you use a design speed, for the roadway, and I believe this is 35 miles per hour currently, the speed limit. And if the faster the speed, the more sight distance you need, obviously. So, this would be something that we would want to work with the design engineer, during the final plan preparation to make sure that we get this right.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, so just, would you be comfortable then, Nick, making sure that we consider that drivers coming on Del Rio, that at some point, somebody will come too fast on that road. They'll be driving 45 miles an hour. We need a sight distance that will be safe for them to stop without creating a.
Yeah, and there's a lot of,
collision.
safety factors built into the AASHTO standards as well. Your average driver, from, senior to, somebody younger. We can certainly beef that condition 41 up a little bit. I mean, I do have some proposed language if the council would like to hear that, that would, address this issue.
I'd be interested in hearing it, and I think your language would probably be
Right.
better than mine.
Let's, I'm going to finish up with council questions and
Sure.
then we'll do that. So Councilmember Peak, you had an additional question?
Yeah, this might be for the architecture and maybe even public safety. But, I've been to a handful of RV resorts. A lot of them are generally outside of town. So like a public safety is not so much of a importance of like bikes being stolen or people coming in at night. And then there's one I go to like Lake Elsinore. It's locked after a certain time. I mean, you can't even get inside without a key card. So there's not a lot of theft from like the neighboring areas. What are the implications for like any sort of case study of something like this where the police force is like, how many average calls per what's going to be the burden on the police? Because people do party at RV resorts, right? So there's going to be people having fun. People do get in accidents. People do think stupid things. People will call the police. So is there in the business plan, is there some sort of security involved? Are there gates that we don't see after a certain hour will be closed? Or like, what are the keeping people from coming in and pillaging when you're camping? Sometimes your bikes are laying around, you're not very secure. Your guard is down, right? So thinking that it's like right in town and we have a lot of development going on that end of town,
Yeah.
How secure will it be?
Yeah, it's a good case. That's a great question. Excuse me. And I wanted to highlight a couple of things that we did in the design process. I know we're not necessarily talking about design so much, but I think it's important given the topic here. I think one of the bigger points that we kind of just need to remember is that the site is naturally sloping down towards the corner of Del Rio and El Camino. And as I think, I forget who mentioned this, but as you're driving down Del Rio, you're kind of wondering like why such a tall wall and retaining, because it looks very modest in slope. By creating those flat pads, we're thereby raising the elevation off of the street, and that right there is a way of dealing with safety concerns, in my opinion. And we kind of talked about that as we were designing the project. We're really elevating that from the public right away. So the idea is that we're creating a destination, and for lack of a better word, compound that, we're advertising public amenity, tourist attraction, but for walkers by that are using that public right of way and walking through or riding a bike, it's not like they're just walking middle of the block and just walking up. So that's a very deliberate strategic grading thing that we designed to elevate the pad to be able to kind of calm us of that concern. There's a lot of articulation on the site walls. So for Del Rio as an example, we pushed the site wall back off of Del Rio. We also staggered it, so we terraced it. So that's kind of creating a sight line improvement as you're going up Del Rio, especially as you're exiting and as potentially we're coming off that left turn. So there'll be more widening of the street from a visual standpoint going up and down. As our civil engineer noted, we're going to grade down that profile to be able to get even a broader distance of sight line. And we've also studied the angle at which you're turning so that we're not teeing up 90 degrees to Del Rio, but we're actually skewed to allow for that easier left turn. There's also discussions on lighting. So I think that was also raised. So we are doing some, as you can see, some entry monument towers. And so those will have some lighting opportunities to light that corner. I think that was an item that was brought up, and we've been talking about that in the design process. So there's various, I would say, measures that we've kind of been thinking about. And then you layer that with all of the requirements that we'll likely be having to satisfy with Public Works and their encroachment process. And I think together we're looking for a pretty solid plan. But we'll be going through the process. We'll get the final report from the traffic study. We'll gather back with our engineers and obviously tag team the execution with the city staff to make sure that we have a great solid project.
Okay, is that it, or do you want to follow on?
Just to follow up, but in terms of like physical people overnight security, what are the requirements from the city for something like this? Or do we have a precedence for having overnight, like how many people, how many bodies are we going to be monitoring
We want this to be a destination project. So by that, we talked about the golf carts, the service of vehicles. So it's all about service. And so there'll be some staff on site. There'll be, 24-hour staff on site being able to monitor this. And that's the type of service that I believe our applicant envisions. So, people on site, that's the best type of security I feel that we can have versus, we can have an array of cameras and alarms and all that, but until you have a good organized plan for the staff that's on site, I think that should mitigate, all the partiers. And we welcome partying, but at the same time, we want to make sure that those that don't want to get a restful night.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
And you were talking earlier about the wall that shields on Del Rio, that shields the campsite, the RVs from view from the street. Am I correct in assuming that that's what we see on page A39 of the packet?
We can pull up 839.
I don't know if you can see that, but.
Staff, you don't have that, do you? At least not presentable on the
Okay.
screen.
I don't know if you're.
Okay. Can we-
Okay, but we can come back
Yeah.
back to that question. I just was going to help the mayor out with that thing. And then, I wanted to ask, the height of the building on the corner, it's a good spot to have some height for presence. Does the overall height, how does that compare roughly to what you see catty corner at the Home to Suites?
And I'm sorry,
A39 was the question.
839, so to go to, so yes, the elevation that we're calling building 13 for an elevation, that is the wall that we are talking about. That's the privacy wall that will isolate the view to the campgrounds. And so you can see that at the lower part, we do have a lower wall section, and then it terraces up to that larger wall section. And we're planning to articulate that. The idea is to make it feel like it's commercial and not a bunch of RVs lined up there on El Rio. So
Yeah.
I hope the drawing doesn't do it justice because it looks like a bunch of storage units right there, but because I don't think the drawing, the drawing is flat. It doesn't represent the articulation and then the terraced thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to revisit the design because the design review committee has done all that.
Yeah.
I would say that particular one.
840, the sheet next has a perspective of that same wall.
Okay. All
And
right.
there's definitely some depth there where we have the sidewalk, landscape at grade, we have a retaining wall that comes up and provides that terrace.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do is first allow any community comment, open it to the public for public comment. Then we'll come back and while we discuss it as council, we'll ask the Public Works Director to provide the possible language change in condition 41, I guess. But I'd like to see if there's any member of the public which would like to comment on this project. Please approach the podium and if you'd like to be next, go ahead and please stand in line so we can be very expeditious. And please state your name for the record.
Hello, yeah, I'm Randy Lawrence. I live on Obispo Road and I've lived there for 39 years. I actually went to the design review committee meeting as well, and I remember Ms. Funks being there. And my concerns then are the same as now, and the same as yours, Mr. Bourbeau and Mr. Peak, and certainly Ms. Funks, about the risk and the problems associated with an exit coming out of this development and right on towards Obispo Road. I think it had mentioned there was kind of an angling so that it makes it a little bit easier for the left-hand turn coming out of there. That would actually make it that much more difficult to look back behind you to try to see cars coming along that curve area. Having probably made turns at that intersection myself probably once a day for 39 years, and sometimes more often than that. I can't tell you the number of times I've been surprised, and not in a good way, by people driving on Del Rio, particularly coming, heading west, coming around that curve, particularly if I'm trying to turn left onto Obispo Road heading eastward. I know it's kind of gets a little confusing, but oftentimes I'm getting ready to make my left-hand turn and all of a sudden somebody shows up around that curve. They're coming pretty quick. I think I understand all of your attempts to try to ameliorate this issue, but being a student observer of human nature over the years and in my profession as a trauma surgeon, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, it just doesn't happen. People do all kinds of, which you wouldn't expect to be natural things or usual things, and something happens. I think that intersection has been a problem, an increasing problem in the time that I've been here. And I think adding any other piece of confusion to it, such as someone exiting from that area, I think just really is begging for something bad to happen eventually. And I really don't want it to be me or anybody in my family. The people who live across the street from the exit that you're proposing, on both sides of Obispo Road, tend to park cars and trucks frequently in their yards and along Obispo Road, right up at that against that stop sign, making your vision, if you're on Obispo Road, looking towards that curve, making it difficult. And even in that situation, you're looking, your view is a little bit clearer than it would be for somebody coming out of the.
I need you to wrap it up. Your 3 minutes is up. Can
sorry.
you wrap it up in a sentence? Because your 3 minutes are up. Can you wrap it up in a sentence or two? Because your 3 minutes are past.
Oh, I'm sorry. So bottom line is, I just don't think it's a good idea. At the design review committee, I thought it had been indicated that you were going to try to do something different and that was going to be eliminated. I really think that's the safe thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I'm Fred Monroe. I live on Del Rio Road, exactly 1 mile east of this site. I can tell you that one of the first things that occurred to me when the discussion came up about vehicles coming in and out of there was actually not what I was planning to speak about this evening. There are over 20 RVs over 30 feet long, parked permanently or semi-permanently on either Del Rio or Traffic Way, that use that as really the only way in and out of that area at all. So we already have a lot of RV traffic in there, which I believe is not related to this site specifically, but is related to people paying attention to what's going on. From the road up from El Camino up to the site you're talking about now, the line of sight is terrific. The gentleman lives over on Obispo. I know he's concerned about the amount of traffic that's around there too. I think the natural curve of the road and the vegetation over the right of way, in my experience, slows traffic down to some extent. I would like to see that. I'm very much in favor of the project. I would like to see the applicant and the city come up with a plan that works, that addresses maybe his concerns and some other fears without sabotaging the project, because I think where that road is may just be the biggest factor. But from that standpoint, I think that's addressable. What I did want to talk about, among other things, is I want to encourage the city and the applicant to work together to make sure the commercial space that's used in there becomes more of a marketplace type environment, where there is a lot of use of that site by not only tourists who are traveling and RVers, but also our community. What we can do to make that a more engaging location for not only the people who come to the area to visit, but people who are looking for things that they can do in the area. I think that's very important. An example also is that Castoro Winery does outside music, probably 2 or 3 times a month in the good weather. that doesn't intrude on the area surrounding it, but indeed it draws people to the area and draws people to what's going on. I think that's important, and I would encourage the applicant to do more things like that, because an RV park that only gets used for tourists and doesn't ever get a sense of community is not good for that particular environment or for our community. And I frankly think what's planned here is outstanding. Since the original project, I believe in 21 got approved, I've been wondering why it wasn't being built yet. But I believe it has a lot of good possibilities. And my only real quick question is the El Camino, the left turn off of El Camino going south into the project. It looks like the current center divider would block the ability for vehicles to get in there. I'm wondering how that's getting addressed.
Thank you for your comments. We might ask that question. So thank you. Any other member of the public wishing to comment on this item? Okay, if not, we'll bring it back up for council discussion and ultimate disposition. Mr. DeBar, I believe you could answer that particular question about the alignment of the exit on El Camino, exit or entrance, because it will align with the current southerly driveway at the outlets, correct?
Yes, so that's going to be a signalized intersection, as traffic develops. So southbound traffic will have a left turn lane into the project. That's the intention. And the island would would most likely necessarily need to be modified to accommodate that left turn lane.
Okay, thank you. Would you go ahead and address Councilmember Funk's question and with the suggested language? And that's for condition 41, correct?
Condition 41.
So this would be amended language for condition or additional language. I'm not sure if you're amending what's already there or just adding some additional language potentially.
Sure, I would just add language to it. So currently, condition 41 says a site distance shall be provided for all proposed entries into the project site. All entries shall comply with adopted site distance standards. What I would propose adding to it would be developer shall perform all measures recommended by a licensed traffic engineer and approved by the city engineer. Such measures may include grading, tree trimming, vegetation removal, traffic signage, pavement markings, and other traffic safety enhancements, and in parentheses, flashing signs, etc. No driveway access shall be allowed onto Del Rio Road that fails to comply with adopted site distance standards.
Okay.
That works for me.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Rest of the council have any consensus that that's okay, language addition would be okay? And I want to just make sure, I don't know if the applicants had time, consider that. I know that this issue has been discussed previously with the applicant. I just want to, not that we'll agree with you, but I want to understand if you have any extreme heartburn with that, or if that is, if you have any issue with that language. Okay, anybody? Mr. Herrera, do you have a comment? Or the traffic engineer? Or I'm sorry, you guys have any issue with that? You have any issue with that change of language?
Mayor, we actually prepared a slide that can show that. Would you like to have that on the screen so all can see it?
Yes, yeah, if that would be easier, obviously,
Sure.
for them to follow along.
No, we heard it and we're agreeable to that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Just wanted to give you a chance to object before we put that in. Okay, any further discussion on the part of council regarding the project?
Yeah,
Councilmember
do
Funk.
we need to do anything with regard to to ensure the roundabout or other mechanisms so that there's a opportunity for an exit other than from the upper section, other than that out to Del Rio Road?
That was
Yes,
raised
yes.
by the applicant. I don't believe it's currently a condition, correct?
That's correct.
And I don't know, we would want to make it a condition unless these, further analysis indicated that it should be available, because I think we would have to build it into the project ahead of time and not add it 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's something you're already looking at doing. Is that correct? Yeah, go ahead and
Okay.
please stand up here till we're kind of done with you. We'll keep you on tap here, I guess. we'll say.
Yes, that's correct. Our desire is to create that upper turning area so that we can come back out.
Okay, but that's not currently in any plans submitted or?
Plans have not been submitted with that design. This is a reaction on the concern, and so we're willing to address that.
Okay, staff have a comment on how we approach that?
No, only that if you do want that addressed, it will need to be added as a condition.
Okay.
Okay.
Could we have, do you want to suggest language for that, or that the project, or just have something that the project shall ensure that by a turnaround or other mechanism that the upper project road has an access, has an exit point other than, in addition to Del Rio Road?
How do you, Mr. DeBar, I think that question is really to you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you could maybe add to that condition that I just recommend a modification to, and just say, that a secondary egress from the road shall be looked into. And
Well, how about if you just added it when you mentioned the flashing lights as a possible alternatives?
right,
A possible alternative, mention that as a specific possible alternative, so that if it is indicated by the studies, it's, it's already mentioned, and you could say, yeah, you need to do that.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
it would be something we would look at, and if the applicant is agreeable to it, which it sounds like they are, we'll certainly look at that. I know Ms. Gleason mentioned having a condition, if the council does want that added, that's that turnaround, we should probably add that someplace, whether it's a new condition or a modified condition.
So I would say that if your concern is safe egress from the driveway and the sightline study were to require it, that is already built into the condition language that Director DeBar provided. If you want the turnaround, regardless of what the site distance analysis says, you would need to add that as a specific condition.
I'd actually be interested if our fire marshal would, since he's here in the audience, would like to comment on whether it would be safer to ensure that that this portion of the resort that's going to have a significant number of larger vehicles does have the opportunity for 2 points of egress in the event that something should happen to one of them.
And can we get that language up there, like the city manager suggested might be possible? Can you get that language up on the screen?
Yeah, so
ahead.
during our preliminary review, our concept plan review, the exits that were provided were within the scope needing for emergency exit. But depending on the traffic analysis is where we would need that secondary turnaround. But as we already reviewed it, the way it is proposed for emergency ingress and egress is acceptable.
Okay, I would just suggest perhaps, Councilmember Funk, that just right here where it says flashing signs, et cetera, within that parentheses, add, separate turnaround for the upper RV spots. That way it's not mandated, but unless, further study indicates that it's really necessary. I don't want to impose it on you and then you find out that, it's an extra $1 million to put this feature in. But I'm glad sounds like you're ready and willing and able to do it. But I'd be a little hesitant to require you upfront to do it unless further study indicates that it's a real necessity. So I don't know if that works, just to, add that as a possible feature in these parentheses with flashing signs.
May I suggest instead that we just simply make that a parenthetical comment that follows pavement markings, comma, alternative egress, comma, and other traffic safety enhancements.
That's my point. You just put it in the.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
We'll just put it in the list.
Anybody have it?
That'll work for me.
Staff, do you have a concern about that on the planning side? Okay, good.
No.
City attorney, any concern about that? Okay, Mr. Martin, let's do that. Let's just add it inside that parentheses, and then with that, I think council had a consensus that we were okay with this amended language, did not raise any major objection with the applicant. Okay, any further suggestion or any, amendments you'd like to make to what we're approving here?
So since this amendment, we no longer discussing the safety of the intersection, or is that kind of figured out later once?
No, we're saying that, they'll have to do, they've got to do what the city engineer has to approve what they're doing.
Right. But in terms of like the actual design of the property itself up to the exit to the road, we're no longer we don't, at this point, there's no reason to discuss that, or?
Right, I don't see that there is. I mean, the rest, unless you had some concern about the rest of the project or the layout of the rest of the project, it's already been through, to planning commission.
No, in terms of the traffic leaving the property, if it's going to be completely, I guess my initial thing was, who's leaving this road on a daily basis? Is it only when you're checking out? If you're going to go get groceries and go to the beach, are you going to take your Suzuki Samurai that you tow behind your RV? Are you going to be able to leave this driveway? Is this only for checking out and leaving? Or is this going to be a constant exit for campers?
No, it's only for the RVs that are up on that hill as shown on the site plan.
During the course of their stay, can they leave in their regular vehicle through this exit as like a exit point ongoing, or is it like a gate where you go through it only when you're checking out?
When they're checking out, they'll be able to leave, yes.
But is it going to be like a constant exit when people are leaving to go enjoy the Central Coast?
Typically, my experience with camping is that normally there's an effort in checking in and getting everything situated in itself. And my experience in those dealings, and I have friends that do that all the time, the last thing that they want to do is pack up everything else to take a trip downtown with their big RV. They usually have another means, Uber, things like that are making it more convenient to be able to, move outside the site during the time that they're staying there. So the way I'm envisioning this is that they come in, check in, get their campground set up, and then when they're ready to check out, the whole king boodles that goes with it.
Okay, if I can clarify, I think I understand what Councilmember Peak is trying to say. If you're towing, say, a big fit, you got a pickup truck, and then you're all settled in, you're set up, but now you want to go to the beach, okay? Is your pickup truck, you going to drive out of that exit, or is it only for exit for checking out?
Yeah, that's an exit only, checking out.
Okay, so getting in the truck and going to dinner someplace, you're not going to use that exit.
You're coming out of the roundabout onto El Camino Rio.
Okay.
Okay, any
I'm
further?
trying to see how you're going to get to that if you're up at these top spaces.
Yeah, and you're already angled to the west
Yeah,
or to the north.
So how do you get to that roundabout?
So the last space right before it serpentines, there's an area there that we were just talking about, how staging that for a turning area.
So you'd make a complete U-turn and come back down through those.
Yeah.
So you're basically going the wrong way on a one-way.
That section of road is wide enough for a two-way.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion by council members? Otherwise, it's time for a motion.
Well, I did have a couple questions that I know the safety of the exit was a big topic, so we talked a lot about that. But I just want, for the people listening, and a lot of people have asked, the pool and the type of repairs, what is the extent of repair? When you say repairs, I'm thinking, okay, it's not, changing the motor out or a transmission repair, but is it going to be oil changes? I mean, what is there a tire repair center? What is the extent of the repairs? And is the pool going to be open to the general public?
The pool will definitely be open to the general public. We want this to be, as one of the gentlemen speaking up here, we want this to be a local community too based center. So that is the foremost, the heart of it. We get the tourists in, great, but we want this open to the general public here in Atascadero.
At a charge, though. I mean, it's not just walk in for free. There's a charge to use the resort facility, including the pool.
Correct. There's a clubhouse and community center. There'll be a membership, I believe, that we're talking about. So be able to just
understand. I just didn't want anybody listening to get the impression that it was a free and open pool.
It's a membership, yes.
Okay, got it.
And as far as the service station, really, it's more of a cosmetic. I think staff planner kind of described it that way, and that's how we see it. It's not changing oil changes, or we're not doing car repair. We're basically wiping windows, making sure it's getting ready. for the trip out of the, you know, or maybe there's, you know, air pressure. They need to put some air on the tire before it goes out. Those kind of things.
Probably shouldn't be calling it a repair area. I don't know if that's what it's actually.
I would agree. It doesn't sound like a repair facility. It's a
That might make-
service.
That might make some people nervous to think that there's going to be, you know, large vehicles that are going to be repaired. And, you know, maybe it can't get done today, so it's going to take some time. I know that's not what you're planning, but I want, you know, to comfort people that are worried that the extent of the types of repair. So maybe we should not be calling it that. That's what it is.
And we're free to change the language on that if needed. But the idea is that we're providing a service and they're staying, they get their RV washed because most likely they don't want to wash it back at home and it's ready to go when they leave. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, I think we're looking for a motion unless there's further.
Sure. Yeah. Is Councilmember Peak is looking?
Yeah,
like
being
he
that I'm the
wants to ask
junior
something?
one here, I just want to be clear, when we vote on this, if the traffic, if we come to the point where we need to figure out Obispo, this is like the traffic, city traffic engineer licensed guru says, we need to figure this out. We need some sort of lighting. We need some sort of, we can proceed. We can, okay.
Yeah.
Basically, we've heard the council's concern. So they're gonna have to do some additional studies to the satisfaction of Mr. DeBar. If that includes some striping or a lit sign or something else, they have to do that before they're able to proceed. If that's how you vote.
And they don't need to come back to us for an amendment or anything. In other words, we're empowering Mr. DeBar to say, okay, you know, further study reveals that you need to do X, Y, or Z. It doesn't need to come back to us.
And I would add that, you know, with all the questions and stuff that I've raised, I'm excited about this project. I think that this is going to be, add a lot to our city. I have come to get to believe in it, come to see it as a real value added for the community, or things for the community to do in this part of town together, as well as all of the tourists that will bring in to enjoy our community. So I would be honored to move that we approve the recommendations as stated by staff in the report, with the addition of the following language to condition 41, that the developer shall perform all measures recommended by a licensed traffic engineer and approved by the city engineer. Such measures may include grading, tree trimming, vegetation removal, traffic signage, pavement markings, alternative egress, and other traffic safety enhancements, flashing signs, etc. No driveway access shall be allowed onto Del Rio Road that fails to comply with adopted site distance standards.
Your motion includes all three recommendations.
Yes, all three recommendations as listed by staff in the report.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Funk, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Daris. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris,
Yes.
and Mayor Robo.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Newsom absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And like Councilmember Funk said, I'm very excited about this project, and I think it's going to really add to Atascadero and bring to an end the long saga of the Walmart site with something that ultimately I think is probably going to be actually better for our city. So thank you for investing in our community. We appreciate it. Okay, with that, we will move on to management reports. Let's see, what time is it? 7? Was it 7? Okay, does anybody need a break? I think we should.
I'd take a brief
Okay,
break. Yeah,
okay, let's make it a
thanks.
5-minute break real quick
Sure.
and let the audience exit, or most of the audience exit the chamber, and then we'll move on to item C1.
Thanks.
said it's going 50 miles per hour down the road or anything like that.
Yeah, but there's probably a lot that go 40. Okay, I think we've had our 5-minute break. If everybody could retake their seats and we'll be ready to move on. Okay, we are ready to move on to management reports. Item C1, our fiscal year 2023-2024 audit. And we're going to turn that over to our Administrative Services or Finance Director, Jerry Rangel.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I'm very pleased tonight to bring you the audited financial statements for 23-24. All right, and we will just pause for a moment while we get the PowerPoint coming up. Okay, so the independent firm of Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim was hired to perform our audit. Mr. Travis Hole, a partner with the firm, is available tonight and can address any questions you have later this evening. The audit was conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States and standards applicable to financial audits contained in government auditing standards. The auditors issued a clean opinion, meaning that they agreed that the financial statements were presented fairly and in compliance with accounting principles. Tonight's focus will be on our general fund. The city had a very successful year in 23-24. Most general fund revenues exhibited favorable variances. Employee services and operational costs came in under budget, and funds were used effectively to make great progress on our priority goals and projects. The top revenue sources for 23-24 came from property taxes, sales tax, TOT, transient occupancy tax, and permits and development revenues. Property tax revenue at 35% of the general fund revenue is the largest city's revenue source and tends to be the most stable in times of economic ups and downs. Property tax revenue was 6.4% higher than the prior year and totaled almost $13 million for the year. The city's tax revenue, sales tax revenue, is made up of different industry groups or sectors that reflect or that react differently to changes in the economy. The fuel and service station industry group, which makes up about 20% of the city's sales tax revenue, was down this year, reflecting statewide trends of reduced consumption and lower prices at the pump. The building and construction industry group was down in the city's base 1% Bradley Burns tax, but up in the Measure D20 tax for a total fiscal year increase of 3.8% over the prior year. The state and county pools all showed increases this year. The city's base sales tax, the Measure D20 sales tax revenue were slightly above the prior year, coming in at $11.4 million. Transient occupancy tax, or TOT, has been increasing in recent years due to council's emphasis on economic development and from the help from the Atascadero Tourism Business Improvement District. In fiscal year 23-24 marks the third year in a row that this revenue source has broken the $2 million mark. TOT was slightly down over the prior year, but exceeded expectations. It came in at $2.1 million for the year. Permit and development activity was strong again this year, albeit somewhat slowed from the prior year. Permit and development revenue came in at $1.9 million. Total general fund revenues, excluding Measure F14, were 36.1 million this year. The city is a service organization, so the largest portion of general fund expenditures is dedicated to employee services. About 63% of the general fund's expenditures went toward these employee services. During the year, we were able to add much needed staff positions and make wages more competitive thanks to Measure D20. Due to these changes, staffing costs for 23-24 were higher than the prior year, but did come in under budget. Operating supplies and services came in higher than the prior year, but were also under budget. Sales tax Measure D20 is providing additional resources to allow for more adequate funding for these necessary operations and services to the public, with a focus on council's priorities. The city was successful at moving many big projects forward this year, many of them which will also continue into the current year. Some of these include contributions to the Public Safety Facilities Project, the General Plan Update, Broadband Enhancement, Restaurant Development Loan Program, among others. Any remaining amounts committed for these ongoing projects will be used in the current fiscal year and are also included in the general fund reserve at the end of the year. We've been focused this discussion tonight on the general fund excluding Measure F14, and we did review Measure F14 annual report last meeting, so I'll only touch on it briefly. Measure F14 revenue was about 3.4 million, with expenditures coming in at 4.1. The remaining F14 funds are used on current and planned projects. Excluding Measure F14 activity, the general fund reserves were just over 17.8 million, or 50% of the general fund expenditures for the year. This graph demonstrates the general fund reserves we've been saving for the major infrastructure projects. As we complete these projects, we will use some of those savings as planned. The city is a member of the California Public Employment Retirement System, or CalPERS, that offers benefits to the employees. The city's CalPERS plans are grouped with other similar agencies into pools. The city's net pension liability is affected not only by city-specific factors, but also by the activity of those pools. At the end of this year, the city's net pension liability was about 37.7 million. The net pension liability has increased roughly 2.7% from last year. And this is mainly because it just grows every year with some normal cost. There's interest on the net pension liability. The CalPERS investment return for 22-23 underperformed their expectations, and there were losses due to experiences worse than they had expected, so mainly driven by high inflation and COLAs. The CalPERS investment return for 23-24 was 9.3%, so should help to offset somewhat. The city did pay into the unfunded accrued liability during the year of 2.6 million. Overall, the city is dedicated to solid financial planning and using our resources wisely. With the help of Measure D20 and some other resources, we've been better able to focus on council priorities. Again, Mr. Travis Hull is in the audience tonight, and he can help address any questions you may have. And with that, we are both happy to address your questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rangel. And I know I had the opportunity to ask her numerous questions, so you don't have to listen to me do it up here. And I think others may have had that, other council members have had that opportunity also. With that, any questions, Mr. Councilmember Peak? Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you. Just one question. On the pie chart that shows the, is yours on? No. Oh, okay. It was too close to the speaker. Oh, yours was on. The pie chart that shows the general fund revenue, property tax, sales tax, DOT development, all other revenues. Can you talk a little about that? What is the all other revenues? What would we find in there contributing to that?
That is a category of a variety of different types of revenues. So all of the other service type charges, so any recreation fees, mutual aid for when the fire department goes out and does mutual aid services, any other type of like business license taxes, those types of fees were all just kind of collected. None are that significant on their own, but just to kind of show you the top royal 3 or 4 there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that, to follow on his question, does that include, although like federal and state grants, or are those usually kind of restricted and they don't end up in the general fund?
It depends what the source is. Some of them are restricted, but we do get federal and state grants that do come into the general fund, and they would be collected in that all other revenue category in this chart.
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Funk?
Yes, and I want to thank Director Rangel for a great report and good news we're all happy about, but also for answering my detailed questions, including late last night. So I just have a couple of them that I want to bring up in public. One of them is talking about these other revenues. On page 99, we've got a state legislature grant for the downtown infrastructure enhancement program that was expected at 3 million and is coming in at $1.1 million. I just want to confirm that I understand that, but that's the money that Senator Laird was able to obtain for the city for use in the Atascadero infrastructure in lieu of being able of a different resolution of an issue we were having with the State Finance Department on redevelopment loans. And can you explain why there's only $1 million of it that's been received when I thought we had gotten the check?
Yes, you are correct on both accounts. So yes, this is that money that you're referring to. And yes, we have received all of it. We recognize it as revenue as we use it. So we used $1 million of that money. The rest of it is sitting in fund balance. So it's still available for use and dedicated to that purpose. It just doesn't show up. It'll show up in future years as we use it.
Okay, so yeah, as soon as we pay all those construction bills for what's going on downtown right now, it'll be moving out the door. Okay, thank you. And then the other one was with regard to on page 43, we've got a fire aerial vehicle impact fees fund that's got a deficit balance of almost $700,000. Am I correct in understanding that we made the really smart decision to go ahead and buy a fire truck and even an aerial ladder truck, even though we didn't have the money for it yet, and to gradually accrue the money? And then if that's the case, that's been a while, and that truck's going to need to be replaced. And how do we replace that truck if we haven't paid for the first one yet?
Terrific point. Great question. So we did purchase this vehicle back, I think in 2008, 2009, when we did expect a different mix of development in the community, and that development would have paid a majority of this cost. Things went a little bit differently during that time, so it didn't get paid off, but it will continue to get paid off as time goes. And the replacement schedule for this would come out a different source of funding. This is being paid out of impact fees. So as we accrue those for certain commercial and residential properties, they would apply to this.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Okay, thank you. Not really a question, but I do want to point out, as I usually do, page 104 on our net pension liability, which you addressed, which is substantial, although it almost inexplicably dropped substantially in 2022 and then came back and has kind of been slowly growing, as you noted, and that our pension liability represents about 3 times our annual payroll, and is a substantial drag on our ability to hire more people, because we're paying so much more into our pension liability. And it's something we have to do, but it is a drag on our ability to hire more people. Okay, with that, if there's no other, does anybody have any questions for the auditor? It's an unqualified audit opinion, which in this world, unqualified is good. because it means it was a good audit without any qualifications or caveats. But does any member of the council have questions of the auditor? Okay, if not, thank you for coming this evening. Is there any member of the public which would like, I'm going to let you have a chance to comment, but I want to see if there's any member of the public that would like to comment at all on this issue? Okay, if not, we'll go back to the auditor and like to hear what you have to say.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. So in addition to the unmodified opinion that we gave, which as mentioned was the highest accommodation we can give as an audit, just wanted to mention you each should have gotten a government auditing standards letter. And in that letter, it was clean as far as the internal control testing that we did. So the internal controls are kind of the basis of all the finances for the city. It's how payroll's paid, vendor payments are made, receipts come in. We pick transactions every year to test those just to make sure that, the policies put in place are what we, consider well planned, and then that the city is actually following those. So we didn't have any findings as far as that. So clean report for Jerry and her staff. So they're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yes, good internal controls are extremely important, and it's good to know that we don't just have the policies, you test them, and we are following them. So I think the public can rest assured that the city's finances are well managed and well maintained. So thank you again. This, I believe, is simply a file, and we don't have to take an actual action on this, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, with that, we will receive and file. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, we will move on to our consideration of action to fill the at-large positions on the Planning Commission and the Citizen Sales Tax Oversight Committee. We'll turn this topic over to our city clerk, Laura Christian.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, we have brought this item before you. Every 2 years, following an election, we have at-large positions on both the Planning Commission and the Citizen Sales Tax Oversight Committee that need to be appointed by a majority vote of the City Council. We put those out for applications. And at the close of the application period, there are 2 at-large positions for Planning Commission and 2 at-large positions on CSTOC. We received 2 applications for the 2 at-large positions on planning, and we received 2 applications for the at-large on CSTOC. Typically, we have more applications that are received, and then we hold a special meeting where council interviews the candidates and then chooses amongst those candidates who they'd like to appoint. Given that we did not receive more than the open positions, we're coming to council tonight to ask how council would like to proceed forward. Would council like to appoint those who did submit applications? Would council like to still interview those who have submitted applications? Or would council like to have staff reopen the application period to attempt to solicit additional applications for then interview and appointment? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does any member of the council have questions for the city clerk? Just comments, no questions. Okay, let's open this up to the public and see if any member of the public has comments on this item. Okay, seeing no one approaching the podium, we will close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and action. So Mr. Peak, you had comments?
So if we go to speak with them, even though there's 2 and 2, at that time, we can then reopen it to the public again if we find that somebody cut the mustard or something. I mean,
No, you're not precluded. If you do wish to interview them tomorrow, you can do so. And then if no appointment comes out of that, then we would have to reopen it because there would be those vacancies still.
Right, so we have scheduled a meeting for tomorrow. We previously scheduled a meeting to interview any applicants. What we're faced with here is the option of directly just appointing these individuals because there's obviously no competition. The question would be, does the council want to interview the applicants to feel more comfortable and secure that, yes, these are good applicants for the positions in question? Like to hear what Councilmember Funk and Mayor Pro Tem Daris have to say.
Just, I first of all want to thank very much all of the individuals who did apply, and we are appreciative of your stepping up. It's my general things I've watched how public bodies function, and we've seen some examples of this around the community where It can be really dicey if you get the wrong folks involved. It would be my preference as a matter of professionalism and of serving our community to go ahead and interview the applicants, the four of them, and have that chance to get acquainted with them, talk about the duties of that they're in doing and make sure we're comfortable with them. And then if we are not, if there's somebody that we think is not a good fit for that role, we can have the option of reopening later if we need to do so.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it's our responsibility to at least interview and not just go strictly off of the application and what they put in writing. You can gain a lot from the questions that we're going to ask. So I think we can learn a little bit more about them. And if for some reason they fall short of our expectations, and we have the opportunity to open it up for additional applicants. So yes, I'm open to interviewing.
Yes, I would feel the same as you both suggested. I mean, I'm very pleased with the applicants, their applications. I mean, I feel, inclined that they very much will be acceptable, but I think it is incumbent upon us to actually interview people and not select them off of paper only. And so as much as I'd, like to not have another meeting, we have scheduled this meeting, and I think we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't, at least interview them and confirm, what the applications indicate. So I think that's clear enough guidance to the city clerk that we will indeed have the meeting tomorrow. We will conduct the meeting, and we will not make appointments this evening. Okay, any further action needed on our part?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, with that, I believe we are ready to move on to council announcements and committee reports, and I will begin on my right with Councilmember Funk.
Okay, I am going to be attending a meeting of the REACH. They're having a conference this week in Santa Barbara. I'm representing the city on that. I want to make sure that we keep an eye on what they're doing and that they remember that we're important and not just the folks down there near Vandenberg. We'll look forward to reporting back on the findings of that event. And then a brief word from HSOC, the Homeless Services Oversight Council, actually two comments. One, our next full meeting in March will be a half-day session in which we are going to do a comprehensive review of the funding architecture for homeless services in the county and have a more interactive workshop type environment. So this will be an excellent opportunity if anybody is eager to really understand better how the whole system fits together of dealing with homelessness in the county, particularly from a financial perspective. It's very complicated. And this will be a really helpful chance to get a big picture. It's something that we have not been able to do previously and will be really valuable. And the goal here is to set up a process where we give more strategic guidance up front on the large grants that come through, particularly the big state grants that can be used for housing or for home or for shelter or for outreach or for mental health. You can use the whole range of things to make sure that we are giving proper guidance to the Technical Grant Review Committee about what the priorities are so that we get back recommendations that can be supported and we don't have to re-engineer them on the fly. So that will be in March.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you. Last week, APCD met. There you go. Put this off. Let's see, a couple of things that were of importance. Gary Willie, the chief officer, will be stepping down at the end of this year, so that a ad hoc committee was formed to help in finding his replacement. And the other big thing was their clean engine program, which is really interesting. People can apply, ag people, farmers and whatnot, can apply to get funds to either replace an engine or an entire tractor. Not that the funds will cover the entire cost, but it's quite a bit of money. Each applicant is allowed up to $100,000 for replacement of equipment to contribute to the clean air. So that was approved. I think they've got $1 million or so in the budget to be able to do that. So anyway, that was a good program. And that's in addition to the electrification for landscapers in that. People can apply to get electric lawn mowers and blowers and stuff like that. So they're not spewing carbon into the atmosphere. So anyway, that was that.
Thank you, Councilmember Peak.
Not since our last meeting.
Thank you. Likewise, I would mention, I don't think it was brought up in the city manager's report, that Earthshine will be doing a creek cleanup in Atascadero on February 8th. And so that's before our next meeting. It's something that I know myself and usually Councilmember Funk participate in. Community members coming out and helping clean up the creeks. So that'll be at Sunken Gardens at 10 o'clock on Saturday, February 8th. And I think that's all we've got. We will, as indicated, on the meeting tomorrow, I'm also curious, are there any other appointments that we have as a city? Because I came across something I think I wasn't aware of, that we have some sort of citizen appointment to SLOCOG that I wasn't aware of. And I think it's, as I understand it, somebody's been there for maybe 30 years and wasn't appointed by Mayor Moreno, wasn't appointed by Mayor O'Malley. And so I'm wondering, are there any other appointments that we as a body or I as the mayor are supposed to be making and have overlooked?
Your only other appointments, and those are as mayor, are DRC. And I think you already did those appointments.
Yes, okay, but anything to do with SLOCOG that you're aware of?
Not other than that email that just went out, but no, I don't know anything else about SLOCOG appointments.
All right, thank you. With that,
Mayor, I will share, I did inquire in just routine business, looking at the RTIP, when they were looking for a committee for that, I did ask Mr. Rogers just to see is there anything else that we need to do. In addition to the RTIP, he did remind me that we have a citizens technical committee, that there's an appointee that serves on that. And that person has served on that committee for a number of years. So that's something this council hasn't looked at in a while. So if there was direction to do that, you certainly could. But there is another appointee that I came across in talking with Mr. Rogers. Okay. And I did one other thing, if I may, I meant to say, and I didn't share, as we're doing 3CE enrollment this month, and I think it's important for our community. One of the benefits of 3CE was that there's some measure of local control, and that our residents have a say to each of you, and we have a say in our power company now. So Mayor Bourbeau will be on the operations committee. We have started our term. I'll be serving on the operations board, and I received notice last week that I was elected vice chair of the operations board and will serve on the executive committee of 3CE. So that's terrific for our community that will have an extra voice. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Okay, any individual determinations? Okay, with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.